2, 1. Courtney, welcome. We're up to module 3, essentially, aren't we?
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, I'm glad we've modularized these programs because they're actually quite heavy, aren't they, in content? And I suppose, from my perspective, sometimes learning's a little bit like you have to clear your mind of what you already know, because it's what you already know that potentially stops you from learning. And at the same time, as you learn something, you've got to be okay with the fact that as you learn one thing, you start to realize how much you really don't know, right?
Yeah, I used to believe in Father Christmas and Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is, Courtney, today we've got the pen is mightier than the sword, yeah?
Definitely.
And we're going to talk about the Magna Carta. I'm not going to profess that I know anything about it. So away we go, Courtney. What do we need to know about that? Why do we need to know this?
I think it's very important. It really summarized our unalienable freedoms, so we don't beg for rights. It basically compelled King John to act for the barons who were at Runnymede in 1215, 806 years ago, give or take. And it was because the king was misbehaving. He'd forgotten who was sovereign, souverain, I like that term as well. And the individual free men and women on the land had certain freedoms, and the king's often trying to take them away to create a triangle and to usurp people's power, the power of individual men and women. No man can rule you nor me. So the Magna Carta codified it, and it put into it, which I like, the Article 61, which many people who believe in true freedom, being able to leave their home, not locked down, not to be jabbed and stabbed with a poisonous vaccine, those individuals believe that they are free under the Magna Carta, which only enshrined what we know to be true.
So these things that are being perpetrated upon us right now, Courtney, with regards to our right to bodily integrity, these are the rights you're talking about, aren't they?
Well, they're not rights; they're freedoms, and I think this is where we're brought down via the.
Thank you for that. They are freedoms.
So these rights we beg for on bended knee, whether we're black, white, gay, straight, women, Muslim, Jew. It's what I call people. We need to get off our knees and stop banging on about rights, because these civil rights have been watered down under Roman law, canon law, ecclesiastical law, maritime law. It goes on and on.
Yeah.
Freedom. So once we understand the Magna Carta said this is the hierarchy, ignore my front doorbell, I'll ignore it. And that process, as we develop, gets us back to our unalienable freedoms on the land.
Yeah.
So Article 61 allowed for what they call lawful rebellion. I don't like the term rebellion. It's per dissent. We're standing in our power. We're using the pen because it's not violent. It's better than the sword. We don't want the sword and violence. We want peace and unity. And what everyone who rules us fear in every government around the world is unity. So the Magna Carta enshrined all people everywhere. So whether you're born in Wales or England or Ireland or Japan or Italy or Paraguay, doesn't matter. You have the freedom to pursue without harm or loss to others, and to keep the peace and act in honour, the basic tenets of how you would want anyone to behave. And that comes under Magna Carta. And the power of it to be invoked was when the Queen effectively was stood down in 2001 by the Barons Committee under Lord Craig Mile. And so we go back to understanding we have to take responsibility to reinstall our freedoms, which have been stolen from us.
Yeah. And of course, what we're currently experiencing with COVID, whether you agree with it or not, is loss of freedom, Courtney, yeah?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we say disagree it or not, I would like to go back to first principles. No one's proven SARS-CoV-2 virus or isolated it, and there's no test and there's no contagion. So this is all part of it. The thing we've lost is that lawfulness about compelling scientists and medics and politicians to tell the truth. It's going to come out. We've got an event on the Isle of Man on the 5th of July, basically a truth tellers event, because we've been so distracted, including myself, when I was in a government role. And eventually you wake up and you realize it's all inverted, perverted. And the law is based on common law, natural law, the law that we get from a creator, however you define that spirit within you.
Yeah, we've also said in our first module that we talked about lawful versus legal, yeah?
completely different. Legal is a bunch of legalers in black robes with some pretty satanic practices. Let's be honest. They have a wig so they can't be judged from above. They got a pocket on the left-hand side to feed the meter, put the money in. Sorry, guys, I used to work with legalers, but they're legalers. So lawful is enshrined. It doesn't need 2,000 pages of Black's Law Dictionary. It's just basically treat others as you would wish to be treated. Then we'll all get on.
Yeah.
So my best friends are black or gay or Muslim or Jew. I mean, stop it. Identity politics is so dead. Are you a nice man or woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we'll.
Yeah, which I totally get that. And so Article 61, how can we apply this? How should we apply this? If you were to give us some practical tips in applying this practically, what would they be?
There are many so-called gurus out there, and I'm very cautious. Somebody asked me 2 years ago to do a template, a vaccine expert, somebody who discovered the truth about vaccines. But the problem is we all come from different roads. What I would say is that if you look at lawful dissent, standing in your power, understanding the difference between a police constable and a police officer, the latter works for a private corporation. And so the corpse oration is key to understand. It's a dead fiction speaking, a corporation there to make money from you, including parking fines with Acro that's run by police. So these deceptions are in plain sight. So how do we do it? I believe that once we understand we are sovereign, nobody can impede us, nobody can stab us and jab us if we are acting in honour and keeping the peace. And the police are only really there to keep the peace and to protect property. So your young men or women, your offspring are property. No one has rights over them when they invade your freedoms. So you have effectively full title to them, whatever the erroneous birth certificate, the legalese trap caught you in. So stand in your power, tell your schools, tell your nurses, tell your Manx GPs, some of whom are not going to have the COVID vaccine, I learned. So that process is telling them under lawful dissent, do your homework on common law, understand the straw man, and start to tell these people in written notices, no capital N, no underlining, no bold, just one font on the paper, you, and name the individual, do not have rights. So we're clear who you is, because that's a strange term. So there's lots of tricks and traps, and you could spend 1,000 hours, and I've certainly spent more than that looking at this. So tell the school, the police, the shop owner that you are not going to be banned from them because there's no science. You're not going to have them adhering and interrupting your freedom to travel and purchase food, which is happening here on the Isle of Man. If you walk into a shop here with a mask on that says hoax, they will tell you in Port Erin not to return to the shop, little town in the Isle of Man. But what's happening here is the same everywhere. So we have unalienable freedoms, which we need to express. We do not consent. Consensus facit legem. Consent makes the law. And when you do not consent, you can stand down police officers. You can tell them quite clearly they have simple roles, and the legalese is a 2,000-page trap in the Black's 11th Law Dictionary, and every year they add to that by 20 pages of money-making scams that just are there to entrap you, and you don't know who the person is rather than the living man. And once you get off that idea, go from sea, maritime jurisdiction onto land, and there are dozens and dozens of websites, videos out there, and people have to go at the speed they're comfortable with, because I'm happy to stand with a police officer and with a Deemster, film them and stand them down. And that's taken me some stupidity, some ego stuff, some aggression from me, because I'm so bloody angry that I was deceived as well for over 60 years.
Yeah, yeah. And this is literally about you gaining your own power, essentially, isn't it, Courtney? It's about you recognizing. Yeah.
I mean, I saw a lady the other day in Douglas. I was wearing this T-shirt. I was there to get some more T-shirts for friends. She was in her 80s. I didn't want to ask a lady her age. Fantastic. No mask, walking well. She was well. She's a control group. I bet she didn't have the toxic flu vaccine. I bet she didn't sit and bathe herself in 5G, which is what's happening with many of these influenza A and influenza B people. She stood in her own power, walked the street. No one was interfering with her. She just wants to be left alone like a little hermit, but she was walking the streets well. And that process of having her power, she understood, I think, what her status was. Everyone else is begging for their rights with a mask, not realizing what's happened. So yeah, get back to your power.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I think that pretty much sums up this article, right?
Yeah, homework, and there's no template, but there are a lot of people out there. Once you get one, keep climbing and understanding language, the person, the corpse oration, the entities that run every government going, and some of the practices these governments do are pretty disgusting. And I believe before too long, many of those are going to come out. So there is a real truth movement who wants free debate.
Yeah, well, and essentially that's one of the cornerstones of democracy anyway.
Yeah, 5th of July, I'm putting an event on here. There'll be thousands of these events around the world as we wake up. I think we're at a massive turning point. There's all sorts of things running in the background, but let's start with no virus, no test, no contagion. Under common law, you can't jab and stab me, and that's it. And we do not consent peacefully.
Cool, that's great.
Thank you.
On that note, that's the end of this module. And then what we'll do is we'll do the next module, and we'll keep these going until we've done as many modules as we can to start putting some stuff into practice, yeah?
Yeah, and people can do that. We're working on leaflets here to stop school nurses and teachers jabbing and stabbing people on the Isle of Man. Same everywhere. We're all at war. 7.8 billion combatants.
And maybe what we can do, Courtney, is we can certainly put an advert on with your book, because your book contains a lot of this information anyway. But equally, what we will do when we offer these as resources, is we can give people access to maybe some documents that we've written that put people on notice of liability. Yeah.
I'm doing that at the moment with a friend of mine. He's half my age. I'm a coffin dodger, but he's wonderful. He's got a young man that's 5 or 6 in a school here. And these feminazis and Mengele doctors want to come around, and they don't know what they're doing. So we have to help them. Yeah. Resources help. It's education. It's too much for most people in dark crevices. That's
great. So that ends this topic. I'll see you shortly.
See you shortly. Bye.